Hello and welcome to ELLIOTT Focus. It is post-match reaction show time after Liverpool have just booked their place in the fourth round of the Carabao Cup for the first time in, I think it's 3 years. We've gone out at the third round stage in the two previous seasons, so it feels good to finally actually make some sort of progress in the tournament. We've taken advantage of the more favourable draw we've got. The draw for the fourth round hasn't taken place yet. I'll check once I've recorded this entire video, and then if it has taken place, then I'll talk a little bit about our fourth round opponents. But in the meantime, let's talk about how Liverpool played tonight. I'm going to sort of talk about the match kind of how I do about pre-season friendlies, because I feel like often in these post-match videos for competitive games anyway, it's more about looking through the match chronologically and how we started, then how we adapted to the problems we faced, how we came out in the trap second half, and then how we dealt with the last few phases of the game. But I feel like, if I'm being perfectly honest, the performance was pretty constant the whole way through. You know, I think it's fair to say Liverpool dominated most of the proceedings. We had a lot of the ball, although going forward there wasn't quite the same attacking verve that we normally see, which is understandable given the fact we were missing Mane, Salah and Firmino. And then defensively, we let a few chances go that maybe you'd expect the first choice defence to not let go. But, you know, obviously again, it's a makeshift defence. Some of them haven't quite got match fitness. They haven't really played together. So it's understandable that MK Dons are going to get a few chances throughout the game. But I thought on the whole, it was a pretty solid performance from Liverpool. And I think given that there's a lot of young players in there, a lot of fringe players as well, players coming back from injury, stuff like that, I think it's a lot more interesting to go through it on more of a player-by-player basis and analyse the performances in that manner. So starting off with the goalkeeper, Kevin Kelleher, I thought it was a very, very impressive competitive debut from him. In the first half, it was a little bit annoying that he hadn't had any shots on target to face, because I sort of thought, you know, we want to see him actually tested, we want to see him prove himself and show that he's got what it takes. But I think certainly in terms of the way he responded to being on the ball, occasionally being put into under pressure situations, essentially everything I talked about in the pre-match video where I said how he looks like the kind of goalkeeper that can deal with the Liverpool style of play. You know, if you pass the ball back to him in a difficult situation where a striker's closing him down, he's not going to panic and lose the ball or just boot it long or anything like that. He's going to deal with that situation well, and we definitely saw that from him in the first half and in the second half as well. But in the second half, we also got to see him make some very, very good saves. Was very, very impressed. He essentially did everything that Pep Lijnders had been talking about in his press conference. He talked about both his ability to adapt to the Liverpool style of play, and also the fact that he's a very good goalkeeper in terms of his reactions and his shot stopping and stuff like that. I think the fact that we've got someone like that as our third choice goalkeeper, who, you know, obviously it's a very, very small sample size to go off of, but put in a better performance than I think you see from a lot of Premier League goalkeepers, certainly from the lower league clubs so far this season. That is an incredibly positive sign of the squad depth Liverpool have, and I'm just really, really happy that we got to see Kevin Kelleher get his debut, because obviously without the Alisson injury, I think it would have been Adrian in net tonight, and it would have been yet another season where Kelleher didn't get any more chances. But, you know, I think that the next round of the competition is in about a month's time, and who knows, if Alisson's recovery is a little bit delayed, then we may get to see a little bit more of Kevin Kelleher along the way. But I think what we saw tonight was fantastic. You know, the saves he makes, especially that point blank one, where I think it's very interesting. Normally when the crosses come in and the headers coming in from about 6 yards out, all the goalkeepers really expected to do is make themselves as big as possible. You know, spread your legs, spread your arms, try and cover as much of the goal as you possibly can. But what Kelleher actually does is he reacts to the fact that the header is down and it's central, and he makes himself a little bit smaller. He actually closes his legs to try and stop the shot, because I think if he makes himself big and spreads himself in like a starfish manner, like Peter Schmeichel used to do, then I think it would have actually ended up going through his legs. So it's very, very impressive reactions from him to actually respond to the situation that he's been presented with and make the save, because obviously I think if MK Dons do get a goal back, being at home, you know, against a big team like Liverpool, that's going to rev the crowd up, and suddenly you've got a nervy last few minutes on your hands where really, given, you know, player fitness and stuff like that, you'd rather just ride out the last 20 minutes in reasonable comfort. So I think a very, very solid performance from Kevin Kelleher. Obviously it's very difficult to know whether he's got any sort of future for Liverpool, because Alisson Becker is fantastic and is quite young, so will be at the club for absolutely ages. But certainly some positive signs there from the young Irish goalkeeper. So moving on to the defence, obviously Dejan Lovren and Joe Gomez, we know pretty much all we need to know about them. I thought both of them were very, very solid tonight. They did what was asked of them. I think Dejan Lovren had a slightly shaky opening, but adjusted to that very well. Joe Gomez was just incredibly reliable throughout. As I said, MK Dons still had a few chances, although some of that can also be put down to the younger players in the fullback positions and the midfield being slightly more attacking than it usually would have been. So I think they dealt with everything very well, and obviously they are going to be lacking in match sharpness because neither of them have really played many minutes at all so far this season. So solid performances from both of the standing centre-backs, and then Sepp van den Berg comes on at the end. doesn't really do anything, to be honest. I mean, it looked like he was getting legged. He was all over the shop, chasing the ball. I think that was more down to the fact he only had 2.5 minutes on the pitch, and he was just desperate to get a touch rather than the fact he had no control over the match whatsoever. So I think it's really hard to make any sort of judgment on Sepp van den Berg, depending on what happened tonight. But, you know, he looked all right. He's got nice hair. I guess that's all you can really say about him. So moving on from the centre-backs, the full-backs starting off with James Milner. I mean, he put in a very, very solid James Milner performance. He obviously gets the goal at a very crucial time. I think if he doesn't get that goal, then the game is very, very different in the second half, because you maybe see frustration starting to creep in. We've seen these kind of games before. I'm thinking of the Leicester game, which we lost 2-0 a couple of seasons ago, where we had a fantastic first half. We dominated proceedings. It looked like it was going to be a comfortable win, and then we didn't get the goal in the first half, and suddenly the game was just a totally different animal in the second half. Leicester came back into it, and within the last 20 minutes they suddenly scored 2 goals and ended up winning the tie. So I think it's so important that we do get that goal before half time, because obviously MK Dons would have been thinking that first 40 minutes, a very solid performance from them. They kept Liverpool shut out, they created a few chances, they stayed in the game as well as they possibly could. And if they got in half-time at 0-0, then they probably would have been very optimistic about maybe, possibly, causing an upset in the second half. So getting that goal just completely changes the dynamic. Obviously, there is a huge element of luck in there. It's an absolute howler from the goalkeeper. But when you're playing against a League One team, you kind of hope that you will get those strokes of luck, because obviously they don't really have the same level of quality that Liverpool do. And at the end of the day, for James Milner, if you don't shoot, you don't score. So it's great to get a goal. I thought overall it was a very, very good performance from him. Going forward, he offered an awful lot, even though obviously left back's not his natural position. He can't do the same thing as Andrew Robertson, where he gets to the byline and whips one in on his left foot, because that is obviously his weaker foot. So he's more inclined to cut inside, which slightly changes the way we're playing. But I thought he did very, very well. On the other side, Hoever obviously had a very, very solid debut. Pretty good defensively, looked nice going forward. Some good touches, some bad. But I think the most positive sign was that he was always involved in things. He was always showing for the ball. He was in the right places, which is an incredibly positive sign, because obviously playing right back for Liverpool is very, very different to playing right back for pretty much any other club. So the positional play and taking up the right spaces in that attacking third is a very, very important side of the game, and he did that very, very well. And then obviously it is a thumping centre-back's header for the goal. I know before the game I talked about how he's probably going to play right back because he is so young. He hasn't quite developed the physique required to actually play central defence, especially against a lower league club like MK Dons, where you're expecting them to be very, very physically strong. So it makes sense that he was put out to right back, but he showed the kind of header that you want to see from your centre-backs from corners. It was just an absolute thumper. We saw the Hoever swept up gag was just all over Twitter for 5 minutes afterwards. I regret I also participated in it. Follow LFC Focus at LFC Focus TV on Twitter if you haven't already. Cheeky little plug there. But yeah, a fantastic header from him. A great cross from James Milner as well. Both fullbacks combining. So, you know, you can maybe criticise the fact that without Robertson and Alexander-Arnold, the fullback system didn't quite work as well as it usually did. But it did still provide us with a goal that essentially did clinch the game, because it's another one where you think if we didn't score that and you get into the last 10 or 15 minutes and it's still 1-0, MK Dons are going to smell an upset. They're going to think, you know, if we draw it, we've got a great chance for penalties. I just realised I haven't even checked the Man U result. Last time I checked, Rochdale, was it, have just equalised. So I'm very excited to see what happened there and whether or not there's been a penalty shootout and whether or not Rochdale have won. But obviously MK Dons, back to the Liverpool match, would have been thinking, well, if we can just force one goal, you know, a lucky deflection or mayhem in the box, just cause that and try and sweep a goal up from that, then they do force a penalty shootout and they can cause an upset. So that goal is very, very important in terms of killing off the game and allowing Liverpool to make that substitutions later on, you know, bringing on Sepp van den Berg, bringing on Herbie Kane, taking off Naby Keita. You know, Jurgen Klopp said in his post-match interview that he didn't want to take Keita off. It was much more of a fitness thing. Obviously, he's coming back from injury, and I think maybe there's an outside chance of him playing in the game at the weekend. I think certainly he either plays in that one or the one against RB Salzburg on Tuesday night, I want to say. So that makes sense why he was taken off there. But if it wasn't for that Hoever goal, then that would have not been possible for Liverpool. So moving on to the midfield, obviously Adam Lallana starts in the number 6 role. Slightly unfamiliar position for him. It's something we've seen him do in pre-season. I think Jurgen Klopp definitely had this in mind. I think he was probably thinking about the fact that the number 6 hierarchy at Liverpool is essentially Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum in terms of how much Jurgen Klopp prefers them in those roles. And I think given that Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum is also essentially the first choice midfield at the moment, he was definitely thinking that he needed some sort of plan B in terms of who he's going to play in defensive midfield. And I think Adam Lallana is definitely the player he's chosen out for that. And I thought he did okay. You know, obviously nothing was asked of him, but that's kind of why he's been put in this role, because we know it's only something we're ever going to do in these games against lower league opposition, where he's not going to have to do too much defensive work, and it is more about being a deep line playmaker. I think defensively, sometimes his lack of physical prowess was shown up, and he was beaten by MK Don's players in kind of 50-50s and stuff like that. But I think going forward, he did offer a lot, and he certainly allowed Naby Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain to bomb on and do a hell of a lot more going forward as well. So a solid outing for Adam Lallana. Moving on to the other midfielders, Oxlade-Chamberlain I thought was very, very solid indeed. I think his ability to, pardon me, either get out wide or go central definitely helped us, certainly in those early stages where it felt like the only attack we were actually trying was passing it to one of those midfielders, letting them get forced out wide and then just drilling the ball across the box and hoping to get a goal out of it, and he did that very well. Obviously, as the shot that came off the post, that was absolutely gutting. It would have been great to see him get a goal. He obviously hasn't had one since his injury layoff, so it feels like maybe a moment like that would really help him announce himself again and get back on the trail to a full and complete recovery, because as we all know, he's still not 100% fit. The injury kept him out for absolutely ages, and while he is fit physically, in terms of match sharpness, he still isn't there. And I think this game was certainly very important because he looked very, very impressive, and I liked what I saw from him. He looked quite disappointed when he came off. He looked frustrated with himself, so I think he did want a goal or an assist or something like that to show for his performance, and he definitely knows he can do better. But I think there were definitely positive signs and positive progress from Oxlade-Chamberlain in this game. Naby Keita I thought was fantastic. You know, obviously he drifted in and out of the games at times, but he showed exactly what Pep Lijnders talked about in his press conference, that unpredictable air, that ability to either cut inside or go wide. It always felt like when he got on the ball, he was going to cause MK Don's problems, and again, he never really set the game on fire. You know, he didn't take it by the scruff of the neck, and he wasn't our man of the match or anything like that, but I think it was another very, very solid showing from him, and you know, I'm very, very pleased with what I saw from Naby Keita in that game, and I think, again, I'd hope to see him in future in either the game against Sheffield United or RB Salzburg next week. Moving on, Herbie Kane obviously comes on as a substitute midfielder. He was okay. I mean, he didn't really get anything to do. The only time he really got on the ball was when he got outpaced by an MK Dons defender, which was a little bit disappointing, but you know, you can't really criticise him for that. Obviously, he hasn't played any first team football whatsoever. I'm pretty sure that is his debut for Liverpool, so you know, fine, thumbs up. He did what needed to be done, which was come on the pitch and make sure that whichever first team player had been subbed off wasn't sorely missed, so that was okay. Obviously, moving on to the attack next, Curtis Jones got man of the match from Sky. I thought he was fine. You know, another player kind of like Naby Keita, who was always in, you know, popping up in the right kind of places. He was playing slightly out of position, you know, on the left wing, which isn't really where he plays for Liverpool normally. He tends to play more either in the number 10 role or as one of the more advanced midfielders, but I thought he did his job very, very well. Cut inside a lot, which obviously caused us a few problems because James Milner was on that side as well, which meant we sometimes pretty much entirely lost our left-hand side. But another solid outing from Curtis Jones. I think he is one of those players that we know he's got a lot of quality. We've seen enough of him in pre-season to know that on the ball he's incredibly technically gifted, but we just haven't seen enough of him in actual competitive game situations to know whether he's good enough to ever make the grade for the first team. And I think it's great that it looks like we might finally make progress in one of the cups, because that means we'll get to see more and more of Curtis Jones in more and more high pressure situations as well, and see whether he's actually good enough to pull on the Liverpool shirt in one of the bigger tournaments like the Premier League or the Champions League. Ryan Brewster I thought was very, very solid as well. Obviously it never quite happened to him for him tonight, but I certainly don't think it was for want of trying. Towards the end of the first half, they showed his touch map and he was absolutely everywhere in that first half. You know, he was pretty much on the halfway line, in the 6-yard box, all the way out on the left, all the way out on the right, essentially doing what's expected of the Liverpool number 9, and that's kind of something I slightly criticised him for in pre-season. I said I think he's almost trying too hard. You know, he's always chasing the ball down, he's always taking up positions, he's always trying to get into areas where there's space, and I think one thing that's really impressive about Bobby Firmino is he knows when to use his energy and when to conserve it. He knows when to press and when not to. He knows when to drift wide into the open spaces and when to actually conserve his energy, let someone else do it and wait for the real opportunities to come along. And that's something that's going to come with, you know, more and more matches he plays. So hopefully we do go further in the League Cup and he's another player that we'll learn a lot more about. But I think certainly positive signs from Ryan Brewster. As I said, didn't score, but it wasn't for want of trying. And I thought generally a very, very solid performance from him. And then of course, Harvey Elliott rounds it up. He's someone that everyone's been waxing lyrical about after the game. Only 16 years old and one of the best players on the pitch. I thought he was fantastic. You know, whether he was playing on the right in the early stages or whether he was playing on the left in the latter stages of the game, I thought he was always involved. What was great was that Liverpool looked to play through him, you know, in the same way that if Salah was on the pitch or Mane was on the pitch, you think, well, they're the best player in the attack, so we have to try and make everything go through him. Everything was running through Harvey Elliott throughout most of that match, and that is an incredibly positive sign. You know, again, lived up to the billing of Pep Lijnders in the press conference, where he said the most impressive thing about Harvey Elliott is he doesn't look like a fish out of water when playing with the first team. He looks like a player with the experience of a 27, 28, 29-year-old. He looks like he belongs playing at this level, and he was so unlucky to not get a goal as well. You know, rattles the bar early on. I think if you gave him that chance another 9 or 10 times, he'd bang it away every single time. And then, of course, hits the bar late on as well with that fantastic effort where he cuts in from the left and then tries to score on his weak foot. So another player that I'm so excited to see in the next round as well. And I'm happy we've gone through, because we haven't had great fortunes in the League Cup or the FA Cup for that matter over the last few seasons. And I think it's great to finally see Liverpool making some sort of progress, because if we do get a favourable draw, and I'm going to check that in a second, then we can actually see some progress, maybe some silverware wear as well, but more importantly for me, we get to see these young players making some proper strides in Liverpool shirt and really find out whether or not they've got what it takes. Okay, it's looking like the draw hasn't happened. I'm going to check Sky Sports now, and it has just started. I mean, do I stick around for this? I'm not going to show you everything. Oh, Everton. Okay. If we get Liverpool here, that's obviously incredibly interesting. I have no idea what ball number we are. And it's Watford. You know what? I can't be bothered to do this. You can find out what I think about the draw in like the pre-match video for the game against Sheffield United. In the meantime, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to let me know down in the comments below what you thought about the performances today. Don't forget to follow @ELLIOTT Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back soon with the pre-match content for the game against Sheffield United. Until then, bye for now.